The reviewer posts 3 findings on a 12-file pull request, then stops and the review sits half done. It does that about 1 run in 10, and the loop it runs today ends when the model's reply contains the word done. Freeze it right there, because a loop that stops on a word is the kind of moment this exam turns into a question. Here is that stall the way the exam writes it. So what should end that loop instead? Option 1. Raise the iteration cap so the loop gets more rounds. Option 2. Tell it in the prompt to write done only when the review is genuinely complete. Option 3. End the loop on the response's stop reason, continuing while that reason is a tool call. Option 4. Have a second instance judge whether the review looks finished before it's posted. Most hands go straight to the fourth one. Reaching for the biggest machine on the page is the most expensive habit on this exam, and it's the one this episode takes off you. So the rest of this is a lab. 7 questions across all 5 domains, weighted like the exam. 2 of the 7 sit on the largest domain. Roughly 16 of the 60 questions you'll sit, 1 on each of the rest. The last one's a multiple response item that tells you how many to pick, and almost no preparation drills that all 7 were written for this course, because the real ones sit behind a confidentiality agreement. 2 people can know this material equally well, and one gets 5 of these 7, the other all 7. The difference isn't memory, it's 3 reads run on the stem in a fixed order, and you already own the first 2. So let's run them on the item you just heard and watch where they stop. First read, name which of the 4 questions you are being asked. This one's about how the loop decides it's finished, so it's a where does the work run. Second read, look for the absolute, and there is no must and no never anywhere in that stem. That's where most people stall. When there's no absolute, the stem has already named the cause. The loop ends when the reply text contains a word, so control flows decided by reading prose, and there's the cause. A bigger cap leaves the prose reading intact, and the guide names an arbitrary cap as an anti-pattern itself. Wording the word more carefully is advice bolted onto the same broken exit. A second instance is a whole extra reviewer for a bug that shows up 1 run in 10. The stop reason is the field the loop's meant to branch on, so continue while it's a tool call, stop when the turn ends. Option 3 is the answer, the smallest change on the page that removes the cause. So say the third read as a rule. No absolute, answer the cause the stem named at the size the evidence justifies. The next item hands you an absolute, and 1 word does more work than you'd believe. Item 2, same system, and this is the shape you'll meet more often than any other. A change touching the migrations directory must never reach a green merge gate before the schema specialist has returned its verdict. Option 1, say in the system prompt that schema review comes first. Option 2, add examples showing schema review before the gate. Option 3, put the ordering rule in the file committed to the repo. Option 4, a hook on the gate tool call that blocks it until a verdict exists. Option 5, give the coordinator a checklist skill it runs at the start. First read, what's the system allowed to do to the gate, so it's a what can it touch. Second read finds must never, and now watch what 1 word does to a 5 option item. The system prompt, the examples, the committed file, and the checklist skill are 4 ways of telling it. Prompt instructions on their own have a failure rate that isn't 0, and the requirements said never. So 4 of the 5 die together on 1 word before you've read them properly. The hook's the only thing on the page sitting in the path of the call, so option 4's the answer. An absolute doesn't knock out 1 distractor, it sorts the page into telling and blocking, and telling loses. Back to the common case, the next item has no absolute and 2 things going wrong at once. Item 3, domain 2, and the reviewer reaches a tracker and a coverage service through MCP servers. Both return the same string on every failure, so a brief outage and a query that matched nothing look identical. 4 options: retry with backoff, structured error responses, better tool descriptions, or escalate every failure to a human. No absolute. So third read, and this stem names two symptoms instead of one. Blanket retries fix the outage half and make the empty half worse, and an option that repairs half a stem is a distractor. Better descriptions fix picking the wrong tool, which isn't what broke, and escalating everything hands a short outage to a person. So option 2 is the answer, a category, a retriable flag, a readable description, and an empty result reported as a success. Next item, the cause is hiding in one clause. Item 4, domain 3, where Nadia's machine applies the org's review conventions and a new hires doesn't. Same repo, same commit, and on Nadia's machine, those conventions live in the instruction file in her home directory. 4 options, commit them at the repo root, copy them into everyone's home file, put them in a skill or add them to the pull request template. No absolute. So third read, and there's the clause that hands you the cause. A file in a home directory isn't shared through version control, which is the whole reason the new hires run differs. Copying it around the team breaks with the next hire, and a skill loads on invocation when these must load every run. The template's a note for humans, the reviewer never reads, so option 1's the answer, the committed repo file. Next one puts an absolute back in and it doesn't want a hook. Item 5, domain 4, and the merge gates an automated job that reads the reviewer's verdict. It must never receive a verdict it can't parse, and the reviewer keeps wrapping its JSON in a sentence of explanation. 4 options. Tell it to output only JSON. Show 3 formatted examples. Define the verdict as a tool with a schema or retry on a parse failure. First read, does intent arrive intact? And the second read finds must never. So the prompt line and the examples die. Retries closer because it's a real mechanism and it still narrows the window instead of closing it. The schema on a tool is the only option where a malformed verdict isn't a possible outcome. So option 3 is the answer. And a strict schema kills syntax errors and does nothing at all about semantic ones. Next, two sources disagree and nobody says so. Item 6, domain 5, where two sources disagree about the coverage threshold a module needs. The design doc says one number, the live report says another, and the summary picked one without saying which. 4 options, prefer the live service, return both values annotated with source and date. Note that sources sometimes disagree or drop the threshold. No absolute. So third read, and the cause is that a step which wasn't allowed to decide went ahead and decided. Preferring the live figure is the arbitrary selection the guide warns about, and the stale doc stays stale. A general note maps no claim to any source, and dropping the field removes the one thing Nadia asked for. Option 2 is the answer, and the date on each value isn't decoration, because two figures from different times often aren't a contradiction. One left, and it changes how you work it before you've read an option. Item 7, and a strip across the top changes how you work it because it says select 2. Every specialist holds every tool the system has, including the gate tool and a deploy tool. Tool selections gone unreliable across the board, and the style specialist has called the gate twice. 5 options. Scope each tool list to the role, tell the style specialist never to call the gate, merge the tracker and coverage tools. Then keep the gate on the coordinator alone, or raise reasoning effort on every specialist. Read the count first, because you are looking for 2 changes. 2 and you stop, and if you've got 3, you misread one of them. Option 2 has the word never sitting in it, and that's the trap. An absolute inside an option isn't an absolute in the requirement, so it dies as ordinary advice. Merging two tools rebuilds the ambiguous description problem, and more reasoning effort doesn't take a tool out of the box. Options 1 and 4 are the answers, because too many tools widens the decision and a tool outside a role is there to be misused. That's 7, so score them by domain before the close. 3 reads in the order you run them. Name which of the 4 questions you are being asked, and half the options go off the point. Look for an absolute, and when there's one, let it kill every option. That's only a way of telling the system. And when there's no absolute, which is most of the time, the stem has already named the cause. So answer that at the size the evidence justifies. So that answers what we opened with. The one who gets 7 isn't remembering more. They're reading the stem as evidence, not scenery. Score yourself by domain rather than by total, because a miss tells you which episode to go back to. Nadia points out this whole thing started with one engineer pasting a diff, and nobody's ever walked the finished build as one system.